This is the second portion of the second book of Adam and Eve. We're halfway through. The book has 22 chapters. So, chapter 12. Then Seth, the just, called his son Enos, and Canaan, the son of Enos, and Mahalalel, the son of Canaan, and said to them, My end is near, and I wish to build a roof over the altar on which gifts are offered. They listened to his commandment, and all of them, both old and young, went out and worked hard and built a beautiful roof over the altar. And Seth's thought was that by doing this, a blessing should come upon his children on the mountain, and he thought he should present an offering for them before his death. Then when the building of the roof was completed, he commanded them to make offerings. They worked diligently and brought them to Seth their father, who took them and offered them upon the altar, and prayed God to accept their offerings, to have mercy on the souls of his children, and to keep them from the hand of Satan. God accepted his offering and sent his blessing on him and on his children. Then God made a promise to Seth, saying, At the end of the great 5 days and a half, the 5,500 years, which is the promise I have made to you and to your father Adam, I will send my word, Jesus Christ the Messiah, and save you and your seed, humanity. Then Seth and his children and grandchildren met together and came down from the altar and went to the cave of treasures where they prayed, and he blessed them in the body of our father Adam and anointed them with it. Very weird. I don't know what that means, but it sounds creepy. But Seth stayed in the cave of treasures a few days and then suffered sufferings to death. Then Enos, his firstborn son, came to him with Canaan his son, and Mahalalel, Canaan's son, and Jared the son of Mahalalel, and Enoch, Jared's son, and with their wives and children to receive a blessing from Seth. Then Seth prayed over them and blessed them, and earnestly requested them by the blood of Abel the just, saying, I beg of you, my children, not to let one of you go down from this holy and pure mountain. Do not associate with the children of Cain, the murderer and the sinner who killed his brother. You know, my children, that we flee from him and from all his sin with all our might, because he killed his brother Abel. After having said this, Seth blessed Enos, his firstborn son, and commanded him to minister continually in purity before the body of their father Adam all the days of his life. He also made him promise to go at times to the altar which he had built, and he commanded him to feed his people in righteousness, in judgment, and in purity all the days of his life. Then Seth's limbs went limp, his hands and feet lost all strength, his voice became silent and unable to speak, and he gave up the ghost and died. Seth died the day after his 912th year, on the 27th day of the month Abib, Enoch being 20 years old at that time. The month Abib is the 7th month of the year in the Hebrew calendar, which is also called Nisan. Then they carefully wrapped up the body of Seth and embalmed him with sweet spices, and laid him in the cave of treasures on the right side of our father Adam's body. And they mourned for him 40 days. They offered gifts for him, as they had done for our father Adam. After the death of Seth, Enos was raised to the head of his people, whom he fed in righteousness and judgment as his father had commanded him. But by the time Enos was 820 years old, Cain had a very large number of offspring, because they married often, being given to animal lusts, until the land below the mountain was filled with them. So they were surrounded by those people they were trying to avoid. Chapter 13. Lamech the blind lived in those days. He was one of the sons of Cain. He had a son whose name was Atun, and the two of them had many cattle. Lamech was in the habit of sending them to graze with a young shepherd who tended them. He was coming home in the evening when he went to his grandfather, his father Atun, and his mother Hazina, and he wept and said to them, so I believe that was the young shepherd who did this, I cannot feed those cattle alone, or someone may rob me of some of them, or kill me so they can take them. Because among the children of Cain, there was a lot of robbery, murder, and sin, a lot of crime. Then Lamech pitied him, and he said, You may be correct. When you are alone, you might be overpowered by the men of this place. So Lamech arose, took a bow he had kept ever since he was a young boy, before he became blind, and he took large arrows and smooth stones and a sling, which he had, and he went to the field with the young shepherd and placed himself behind the cattle while the young shepherd watched the cattle. Lamech did this for many days. So was Lamech and the young guy, who was part of his family. They were guarding the sheep together, the cattle, and he had weapons with him, because you never know. Meanwhile, ever since God had cast him off and had cursed him with trembling and fear, Cain could not be still, nor find rest in any one place, so he wandered from place to place. In his wanderings, he came to Lamech's wives and asked them about him. They said to him, "He is in the field with the cattle." Oh, this is the sad part. Then Cain went to look for him, and as he came into the field, the young shepherd heard the noise he made and the cattle herding together in front of him. Then he said to Lamech, "My lord, is that a wild beast or a robber?" They didn't expect that it could be something peaceful and normal, because he was so criminal in that area. And Lamech said to him, "Tell me, where is he when he comes up?" Then Lamech bent his bow, placed an arrow on it, and fitted the stone in the sling. And when Cain came out from the open country, the shepherd said to Lamech, "Shoot, behold, he is coming." Then Lamech shot at Cain with his arrow and hit him in his side. And Lamech struck him with a stone from his sling, and the stone struck his face and knocked out both of his eyes. Then Cain fell dead instantly. Oh my gosh, this is so graphic. Then Lamech and the young shepherd came up to him and found him lying on the ground. And the young shepherd said to him, "It is Cain, our grandfather, whom you have killed, my lord." Well, it's not his fault. Then Lamech grieved in bitterness and regret, and he clapped his hands together and struck the head of the young with his flat palm, and the youth fell as if he were dead. But Lamech thought the youth was pretending, so he took up a stone and struck him and smashed his head until he died. Oh no, this... Sometimes I wonder if some people in the stories are just unintelligent. I understand he was blind, but why would you do that? Moving on. Oh, very disturbing. If you're disturbed, take a break. I apologize. I don't even know what's coming my way when I'm reading this book, but wow. Okay, chapter 14. When Enos was 900 years old, all the children of Seth and of Canaan and his firstborn with their wives and children gathered around him, asking for a blessing from him. So he was dying too now. Then he prayed over them and blessed. This book is full of death. And blessed them and made them promise them by the blood of Abel the just, saying to them, "Do not let even one of your children go down from this holy mountain, and do not let them make friends with the children of Cain the murderer." Then Enos called his son Canaan and said to him, "Look, my son, and set your heart on your people and establish them in righteousness and in innocence, and stand ministering before the body of our father Adam all the days of your life." After this, Enos rested. He died. He was 985 years old. Canaan wrapped him up and laid him in the cave of treasures on the left of his father Adam, and made offerings for him, following the customs of his fathers. Chapter 15. After the death of Enos, Canaan led his people in righteousness and innocence as his father had commanded him. He also continued to minister before the body of Adam in the cave of treasures. Then when he had lived 910 years, suffering and sickness came upon him. And when he was about to enter into rest, he was about to die, all the fathers with their wives and children came to him, and he blessed them and earnestly urged them by the blood of Abel the just, saying to them, "Let no one among you descend from this holy mountain, and do not make friends with the children of Cain the murderer." So there wasn't a lot of them. It was just a small community. They were multiplying fast or anything. Mahalalel, his firstborn son, received this commandment from his father, who blessed him and died. Then Mahalalel embalmed him with sweet spices and laid him in the cave of treasures with his fathers, and they made offerings for him, as was the custom of their fathers. Chapter 16. Then Mahalalel led his people and fed them in righteousness and innocence and watched them to see they had no relationship with the children of Cain. He also continued in the cave of treasures, praying and ministering before the body of their father Adam, asking God for mercy on himself and on his people, until he was 870 years old, when he fell sick. Then all his children gathered around him to see him and to ask for his blessing on them all before he left this world. Then Mahalalel arose and sat on his bed, his tears streaming down his face, and he called his eldest son Jared, who came to him. He then kissed his face and said to him, Jared, my son, I solemnly urge you, by him who made heaven and earth, to watch over your people, and to feed them in righteousness and in innocence, and not to let even one of them go down from this holy mountain to the children of Cain, or he will perish with them. Hear, my son, there will come a great destruction upon this earth because of them. God will be angry with the world and will destroy them with waters, the flood. But I also know that your children will not listen to you, and that they will go down from this mountain and have relations with the children of Cain, and that they shall perish with them. Wow, this is sad. My son, teach them and watch over them, so that no guilt will be on you because of them. So you didn't lose them because you didn't do your part. It was a choice that they consciously made, fully aware. So it's on them. Mahalalel continued, saying to his son Jared, this is so sad. When I die, embalm my body and lay it in the cave of treasures by the bodies of my forefathers, then stand by my body and pray to God and take care of them and fulfill your ministry before them until you enter into rest yourself. Mahalalel then blessed all his children. Then he lay down on his bed and entered into rest like his fathers. But when Jared saw that his father Mahalalel was dead, he wept and grieved and embraced and kissed his hands and his feet, and so did all his children. And his children embalmed him carefully and laid him by the bodies of his fathers. Then they stood and mourned for him 40 days. Chapter 17. Then Jared kept his father's commandment and arose like a lion over his people. Like a lion? Is that a good or a bad thing? He then fed them in righteousness and innocence and commanded them to do nothing without his consent. This was because he was afraid for them that they should go to the children of Cain. Okay, so he became more controlling and had too much oversight because he was afraid based on what his father told him. Well, that's gonna push them away. He gave them orders repeatedly and continued to do so until the end of the 480 years of his life. He died younger. He had too much stress, poor guy. At the end of these years, there came to him a sign, as Jared was standing like a lion before the bodies of his fathers, praying and warning his people. Satan envied him and produced a beautiful specter because Jared would not let his children do anything without his counsel. Satan appeared to him with 30 men of his hosts in the form of handsome men. Satan himself was the oldest and tallest among them, with a fine beard. They stood at the mouth of the cave and called out Jared, who was in the cave. He came out to them and found them looking like handsome men, full of light and very beautiful. He was in awe of their beauty and their looks, and wondered to himself whether they might not be of the children of Cain. He said also in his heart, because he didn't know them, the children of Cain cannot come up to the height of this mountain, and none of them are this handsome as these appear to be. And among these men there is not one of my kindred, so they must be strangers. So they must be strangers. Oh, beautiful aliens came from a different planet. Yeah, devils taking shapes. Then Jared exchanged a greeting with them, and he said to the oldest among them, My father, tell me how you are so wonderful, and tell me who these are with you. They look to me like strange men. Then the oldest began to weep, and the rest wept with him. And he said to Jared, oh, the fakery. I am Adam, whom God made first, and this is Abel, my son, who was killed by his brother Cain, whose heart was influenced by Satan to murder. And this is my son Seth, whom I asked Lord to give me comfort when I no longer had Abel. Then this one is my son Enos, son of Seth, and that other one is Canaan, son of Enos, and that other one is Mahalalel, son of Canaan, your father. But Jared remained wondering at their appearance and at the words of the elder to him. Then the oldest said to him, Do not stand there now, my son. We now live in the land north of the garden, which God created before the world. He would not let us live there, but placed us inside the garden below which you are now living. So he's saying, we were restored back to the Garden of Eden after we died. So stupid, so horrible. Let me see, where was I? After I transgressed, he made me come out of it, and I was left to live in this cave. That was when great and horrible troubles came on me, and when the time of my death drew near, I command my son Seth to tend his people well, and my commandment is to be hidden from one another to the end of the generations to come. But Jared, my son, we live in beautiful regions while you live here in misery. Your father Mahalalel informed me that a great flood will come and overwhelm the whole earth. Therefore, my son, fearing for your sakes, I rose and took my children with me, and came here to visit you and your children. I found you standing in this cave weeping, and your children scattered about this mountain in the heat and in misery. He knew just enough to be able to sound convincing, because he's watching, taking intel. But my son, as we missed our way and came as far as this, we found other men below this mountain who inhabit a beautiful country full of trees and of fruits and of all manner of lush green vegetation. It is like a garden. When we found them, we thought they were you, until your father Mahalalel told me there were no such things. Now, my son, listen to my advice and go down to them, you and your children. You will rest from all the suffering you are in. If you will not go down to them, then arise, take your children, and come with us to our garden. There you shall live in our beautiful land, and you shall rest from all this trouble which you and your children are now living in. But when he heard these words from the oldest, Jared was confused and went here and there, but at that moment he found none of his children. Then he answered and said to the old one, Why have you hidden yourselves until this day? Then the oldest replied, If your father had not told us, we would not have known it. Then Jared believed his words were true. So that oldest said to Jared, So the devil said to Jared, Wherefore did you turn about so and so? And he said, I was seeking one of my children to tell him about my going with you and about their coming down to those about whom you have spoken to me. What, he fell for this so fast? What? After being a lion with strong control, all of a sudden he's just like, yeah, this sounds plausible, let's go. What? Why didn't you pray to God first? When the old one heard Jared's intention, he said to him, Do not worry about that right now, but come with us, and you shall see our country. If the land in which we live pleases you, we shall all return here and take your family with us. But if our country does not please you, you shall come back to your own home. And the old one urged Jared to go before one of his children come to talk to him out of his decision. Oh my gosh, they want to make sure that nobody can snap him out of that stupidity. Jared then came out of the cave and went with them, and among them Jared, and they comforted him until they came to the top of the mountain of the sons of Cain. Then the old one said to one of his companions, We have forgotten something by the mouth of the cave, and that is the chosen garment we had brought to clothe Jared with. He then said to one of them, One of you go back, and we will wait for you here until you come back. Then we will clothe Jared, and he shall be like us, good, handsome, and fit to come with us into our country. Then that one went back. But when he was a short distance off, the old one called to him and said to him, You stay there until I come up and speak to you. Shady secrets. Then he stood still, and the old one went up to him and said to him, "One thing we forgot at the cave is this. It is this. We forgot to put out the lamp that burns inside the cave above the bodies that are in there. Do it and come back to us quickly." Oh, that one went, and the old one came back to his fellows and to Jared, and they came down from the mountain, and Jared was with them, and they stayed by a fountain of water near the houses of the children of Cain, and waited for their companion until he brought the garment for Jared. Then he who went back to the cave put out the lamp, and came to them, and brought an apparition of him, and showed it to them. And when Jared saw it, he wondered at the beauty and grace thereof, and rejoiced in his heart, believing it was all true. So he was seeing something fake, holograph. But while they were staying there, 3 of them went into houses of the sons of Cain, and said to them, "Bring us today some food by the fountain of water for us and our companions to eat." But when the sons of Cain saw them, they were in awe at them, and thought, "These men are beautiful to look at. We have never seen such before." So they rose and came with them to the fountain of water to see their companions. They thought them so very handsome that they called aloud about their places for others to gather together and come and look at these beautiful things. Then they gathered around them, both men and women. Then the old one said to them, "We are strangers in your land. Bring us some good food and drink, and bring yourselves and your women, so we can entertain ourselves with you." What? When those men heard these words, did Jared not notice something here doesn't add up? We are not in this world to party around. Doesn't he know? When those men heard these words of the old one, every one of Cain's sons brought his wife, and another brought his daughter, and so many women came to them. Okay? It was a brothel now. Everyone calling out to Jared either for himself or for his wife. But when Jared saw what they did, his very soul wrenched itself from them, and he would not taste their food or their drink. The old one saw him as he wrenched himself from them, and he said to him, "Do not be sad. I am the great elder, as you shall see me do. Do yourself in like manner." So he's like, whatever I do, you do the same. Then he spread his hands and took one of the women, and 5 of his companions did the same in front of Jared, that he should do as they did. But when Jared saw them doing their wickedness, he wept and said in his mind, "My fathers never acted like this." He finally realized something's not adding up. But then spread his hands and prayed with a fervent heart and with much weeping, and begged God to deliver him from their hands. No sooner did Jared begin to pray than the old one fled with his companions, for they could not abide in a place of prayer. Ooh, keep that in mind. Let me highlight this. Let me underline this real quick. So Jared prayed, and the devil ran. Boom. Boom, boom. Just like that. Then Jared turned around, but could not see them, but found himself standing in the middle of the children of Cain, by himself, with all these stranger people that he didn't want to be around. He then wept and said, "O God, do not destroy me with this race concerning which my fathers have warned me. For now, my Lord God, I was thinking that those who appeared to me were my forefathers, but I have found them out to be the devils, who lured me by way of this beautiful apparition until I believed them." So don't always trust what you see and hear with your eyes and ears, because your senses can deceive you. The devil can deceive your senses. So you think what you see and hear with your own eyes is fact? No, because it can be fakery, it can be a trick. Okay? But now I ask you, God, to deliver me from this race among whom I am now standing, as you did deliver me from those devils. Send your angel to pull me out of the middle of them. I do not have the power within myself to escape from among them. When Jared had ended his prayers, God sent his angel in the middle of them, and took Jared and set him up on the mountain, and showed him the way, and he gave him wise advice, and then departed from him. That was crazy. You can make a whole TV show or movie out of this, and to be very dramatic. Chapter 18. The children of Jared were in the habit of visiting him hour after hour to receive his blessing and to ask his advice for everything they did, and when he had work to do, they did it for him. But this time, when they went into the cave, they did not find Jared, but they found the lamp put out and the bodies of the fathers thrown about, and voices came from them by the power of God that said, Satan in an apparition had deceived our son, wishing to destroy him as he destroyed our son Cain. They also said, Lord God of heaven and earth, deliver our son from the hand of Satan, who produced such a great and false specter before him. They also spoke of other matters by the power of God. But when the children of Jared heard these voices, they feared, and stood weeping for their fathers, because they did not know what had happened to him. And they wept for him that day until the setting of the sun. Then Jared came with a mournful expression, miserable in mind and body, and sorrowful at having been separated from the bodies of his fathers. But as he came near the cave, his children saw him and ran to the cave and hugged his neck, crying and saying to him, O Father, what have you been, and why have you left us? Because we know you did not want to? And they spoke again, saying, Father, when you disappeared, the lamp over the bodies of our father went out, and the bodies were thrown about, and voices came from them. When Jared heard this, he was sorry, and went into the cave, and there found the bodies thrown about, the lamp put out, and the fathers themselves praying for his deliverance from the hand of Satan. Then Jared fell upon the bodies and embraced them, and said, My fathers, through your intercession, God deliver me from the hand of Satan. I beg you to ask God to keep me and to hide me from him to the day of my death. He didn't want to meet Satan again. So deceitful, such a liar. Then all the voices ceased, except the voice of our father Adam, who spoke to Jared by the power of God, just as one would speak to his friend, saying, Jared, my son, offer gifts to God for having delivered you from the hand of Satan. And when you bring these offerings, offer them on the same altar on which I gave offerings. Even then you must beware of Satan, for he deluded me many a time with his specters, wishing me to destroy me, but God delivered me out of his hand. Command your people that they be on their guard against him, and never cease to offer up gifts to God. Then the voice of Adam also became silent, and Jared and his children wondered at this. Then they laid the bodies as they were at first, and Jared and his children stood praying the entire night until break of day. Then Jared made an offering and offered it up on the altar, as Adam had commanded him. And as he went up to the altar and prayed to God for mercy and for forgiveness of his son concerning the lamp going out, then God appeared to Jared on the altar and blessed him and his children, and accepted their offerings, and commanded Jared to take of the sacred fire from the altar and light the lamp that shed light on the body of Adam. Good. But why the lamp had to stay on, I don't know. Chapter 19. Then God again revealed to him the promise he had made to Adam. He explained to him the 5,500 years and revealed to him the mystery of his coming to the earth. And God said to Jared, Let that fire you have taken from the altar to light the lamp abide with you to give light to the bodies. Do not let it come out of the cave until the body of Adam comes out. But Jared, take care of the fire so it burns brightly in the lamp. Do not go out of the cave again until you receive an order through a vision, and not an apparition that you see with your own eyes, a vision that you see in your spirit, in your mind. Then command your people again not to have relations with the children of Cain, and not to learn their ways, for I am God who does not love hatred and works of sins, iniquity. God also gave many other commandments to Jared, and he blessed him, and then withdrew his word from him. Then Jared came near to his children, took some fire, and came down to the cave, and lighted the lamp in front of the body of Adam. Then he gave his people the commandments just as God had told him to do. The sign happened to Jared at the end of his 450th year, as did many other wonders we did not record. But we record only this one for the sake of brevity, to shorten our written account. And Jared continued to teach his children 80 years, but after that they began to break the commandments he had given them, and to do many things without his permission. They began to go down from the holy mountain one after another, and mix with the children of Cain in obscene association. Now the reason the children of Jared went down the holy mountain will now be revealed to you. So people sooner or later tend to become worse, more selfish, more sinful, more dirty, unless they pursue holiness for themselves. Your holiness will not make them holier. Chapter 20. After Cain had gone down to the land of dark soil, and his children had multiplied, there was one of them whose name was Genun, son of Lamech the blind, who slew Cain. Satan came to Genun in his childhood and made a variety of trumpets and horns and string instruments, cymbals and psalteries and lyres and harps and flutes, so a lot of instruments, musical. And Genun played them at all times and at every hour. Okay, so this is the land of Cain, the people of Cain. And when he played them, Satan came to them, so that from among them were heard beautiful and sweet sounds that seized the heart with delight. So Satan made all these instruments. He has musical talent, and we heard stories about musical talent and Satan and artists. I don't know. Then he gathered many crowds to play on them, and when they played it, it greatly pleased the children of Cain, who fanned themselves to flames of sin among themselves, and they burned with fire, while Satan inflamed their hearts with one another, and lust increased among them. Satan also taught Genun to make strong drink out of corn. Okay. Genun used this to bring together crowd upon crowd in houses to drink, and brought into their hands all kinds of fruits and flowers, and they drank together. So he was an entertainer. Alcohol and music. Genun did this to multiply sin greatly. He also acted with pride, and taught the children of Cain to commit all manner of the grossest wickedness, which they did not know until then. And he put them up to all kinds of deeds which they did not know of before. Then when Satan saw that they obeyed Genun and listened to him in everything he told them, he was very happy, and he increased Genun's understanding until he took iron and with it made weapons of war. Then, when they were drunk, hatred and murder increased among them. One man would use violence against another, and Satan would teach him evil in that one man would take the other man's children and defile them before him. And when men saw they were vanquished and saw that others were not beaten, those who were beaten came to Genun and took refuge with him, and he made them part of his group. Then sin increased among them greatly, until a man married his own sister or daughter or mother and others, or the daughter of his father's sister, first cousin, so that there was no more distinction of relationship, and they could no longer discern what was sin and what was not, but always were wicked, and the earth was defiled with sin, and they angered God the judge who had created them. But Genun gathered together groups and groups that played on horns and on all the other instruments we have already mentioned at the foot of the holy mountain. Oh my goodness, by the good people. They did so that the children of Seth, who were on the holy mountain, would hear it. But when the children of Seth heard the noise, they wandered and came by companies and stood on the top of the mountain to look at those below. This went on an entire year. At the end of the year, Genun saw that they were being won over to him little by little. Satan entered into him and taught him to make the elements for dyeing garments of various patterns, and made him understand how to dye crimson, so red, and purple, and what not. And the sons of Cain, so he got possessed by the devil. And the sons of Cain, who worked at all this, shone in beauty and gorgeous apparel, so it made it more and more attractive and appealing with all these physical, materialistic stuff, and it influenced them gradually, so it didn't feel like a major change. It didn't blow into their face for them to understand how horrible it was. So when they were lured in gradually, people are more likely to change in the bad direction when it's gradual. And they gathered together at the foot of the mountain in splendor, with horns and gorgeous dresses and horse races, and they were committing all manner of disgusting acts. So it became showtime, entertainment, Super Bowl, whatever it happened. Which is what a lot of people, even to these days, are spending their efforts, time, and money on. Just think about Las Vegas. It's pretty much this. Meanwhile, the children of Seth, who were on the holy mountain, prayed and praised God in the place of the hosts of angels who had fallen. God had called them angels because he rejoiced over them greatly. But after this time they no longer kept his commandment, nor were held by the promise he had made to their fathers, but they relaxed from their fasting and prayer. Does that sound like something normal? They relaxed from fasting and praying. They weren't as zealous and committed to it. They relaxed from the counsel of Jared, their father. They weren't listening that much as they were before, because their attitudes, their opinions have changed through this gradual poisoning. Let me highlight that. They're relaxed from their fasting and praying. Is that you? Is that me? A lot of people. And they kept on gathering together on the top of the mountain to watch the children of Cain from morning until evening. So they were committing their selves and their times to this. They weren't committing it to God anymore. They were committing it to this entertainment industry that the devil put together through Cain's people. And they watched what they did, and they looked at their beautiful dresses and ornaments. They probably started craving. Then the children of Cain looked up from below and saw the children of Seth standing in numbers on the top of the mountain, and they called to them to come down to them, to join them. But from above them, the children of Seth said, "We don't know the way." Oh, then Genon, the son of Lamech, heard them say they did not know the way, and he began to think to himself of ways he might bring them down. Then Satan appeared to him by night, saying, "There is no way for them to come down from the part of the mountain on which they live. But when they come out tomorrow to watch, say to them, 'Come to the western side of the mountain. There you will find a stream of water that comes down to the foot of the mountain between two hills that marks the way. Come down that way to us.'" Then, when it was day, Genon blew the horn and beat the drums below the mountain, as he was accustomed to do. The children of Seth heard it and came as they used to do. So he had like his own stage. This was probably a cliff of a mountain, so they couldn't come down because it was a cliff. So he used that cliff as the backdrop of his stage, and that's why they probably couldn't come down. That's what I think was happening based on what you're saying. So he told them, Genon told them, "Go to the western side of the mountain, there you will find a way to come down." But when the children of Seth heard these words from him, they went back into the cave to Jared to tell him all they had heard. Then when Jared heard it, he was grieved because he knew that they would defy his wishes. After this, 100 men of the children of Seth gathered together and said among themselves, "Come, let us go down to the children of Cain and see what they do and enjoy ourselves with them." Well, fun didn't kill anybody. Well, yeah, it's killing them. It seems innocent, but it's not. Because it starts with something small before it completely destroys you. But when Jared heard this of the 100 men, his very soul was moved, and his heart was grieved. He then stood with great emotion in the middle of them, and earnestly compelled them by the blood of Abel the just, and said, "Let no one of you go down from this holy and pure mountain, in which our fathers have ordered us to live." But when Jared saw that they did not listen to his words, he said to them, My good, innocent, and holy children, you must understand that once you go down from this holy mountain, God will not allow you to return here again. He again adjured them, saying, I plead with you by the death of our father Adam, and by the blood of Abel, of Seth, of Enos, of Canaan, and of Mahalalel, to listen to me. Do not go down from this holy mountain, because the moment you leave it, life and mercy will be taken from you, and you shall no longer be called children of God, but children of the devil. There was no middle ground. There is no middle ground. You're on this extreme or on the other extreme. There is no lukewarm. You're either of God or you're not of God. But they would not listen to his words. Enoch was already grown up at that time, and in his zeal for God, Enoch comes in. His students said, Hear me, you large and small, young and old, sons of Seth. When you transgress the commandment of our fathers and go down from this holy mountain, you shall not come up here again forever. But they rose up against Enoch and would not listen to his words. But they went down from the holy mountain. And when they looked at the daughters of Cain, at their beautiful figures, and at their hands and feet dyed with color, and the tattoos on their faces that ornamented them, the fire of sin was set ablaze in them. Sounds like henna. Their hands and feet were dyed with color. Weird. Then Satan made them look most beautiful before the sons of Seth. He tempted them, as he also made the sons of Seth appear the most handsome in the eyes of the daughters of Cain, so that the daughters of Cain lusted after the sons of Seth, like ravenous beasts. And the sons of Seth lusted after the daughters of Cain, until they committed disgusting and disgraceful acts with them. That's so sad. That's what happens. If you go down the route, sooner or later you'll fall into that trap where it's too late to back out. It might seem like a little act, and then boom. That's what happens. But after they had fallen into this defilement, they returned by the way they had come, and tried to ascend the holy mountain. So after all was done and satisfied, they're like, okay, let's go back home. We're done with our party here. Party's over. But they could not, because the stones of that holy mountain were on fire, flashing before them, and prevented them, so they could not go up again. And God was angry with them and turned from them, because they had come down from glory, and because of this had lost and forsaken their own purity and innocence, and were fallen into the defilement of sin. Then God sent his word to Jared, saying, These of your children, whom you once called my children, have broken my commandment, and have gone down to the house of damnation and sin. Send a messenger to those that are left, so that they will not go down and be lost. Then Jared wept before the Lord and asked him for mercy and forgiveness. But he wished that his soul might depart from his body, rather than hear these words from God about his children that went down from the holy mountain. But he followed God's order, then preached to them not to go down from the holy mountain, and not to hold relations with the children of Cain. But they did not listen to his message, and they would not obey his advice. Chapter 21. After this, another group gathered together and went to look after their brothers, but they perished with them as well. And so it was, company after company, until only a few of them remained. Then Jared was sickened with grief, and his sickness was such that the day of his death was near. Then he called Enoch, his eldest son, and Methuselah, Enoch's son, and Lamech, the son of Methuselah, and Noah, the son of Lamech. So Noah was present as well. And when they came to him, he prayed over them and blessed them, and said to them, You are righteous, innocent sons. Do not go down from this holy mountain, because you have seen your children and your children's children have gone down from this holy mountain, and have alienated themselves from this holy mountain through their reprehensible lust and transgression of God's commandment. But I know, through the power of God, that he will not leave you on this holy mountain. Your children have transgressed his commandment and that of our fathers, which we had received from them. But my sons, God will take you to a strange land, and you shall never return to see this garden and this holy mountain with your own eyes once again. It was too close, too tempting. Therefore, my sons, set your hearts on your own selves and keep the commandment of God which is with you. And when you go from this holy mountain into a strange land which you do not know, take the body of our father Adam with you, and with it take these 3 precious gifts and offerings, namely the gold, the incense, and the myrrh, and let them be in the place where the body of our father Adam shall lay. And my sons, of you who are left, the word of God will come, and when he goes out of this land, he shall take with him the body of our father Adam, and shall lay it in the middle of the earth, the place in which salvation shall be worked out. Then Noah said to him, Who is he of us that shall be left? And Jared answered, You are he that shall be left, and you shall take the body of our father Adam from the cave, and place it with you in the ark when the flood comes. And your son Shem, who shall come out of your loins, it is he who shall lay the body of our father Adam in the middle of the earth, in the place where salvation shall come. Then Jared turned to his son Enoch and said to him, My son, abide in this cave and minister diligently before the body of our father Adam all the days of your life, and feed your people in righteousness and innocence. And Jared said no more. His hands went limp, his eyes closed, and he entered into rest like his fathers. His death took place in the 360th year of Noah, in the 989th year of his own life, and the 12th of Taxas on a Friday. Okay, so in this year, the month of Taxas was likely to be December. But as Jared died, tears streamed down his face by the reason of his great sorrow for the children of Seth who had fallen in his days. That is so sad for this man to have experienced. His efforts in vain, nobody listened. Then Enoch, Methuselah, Lamech, and Noah, these 4, wept over him, embalmed him carefully, and then laid him in the cave of treasures. Then they rose and mourned for him 40 days. And when these days of mournings were ended, Enoch, Methuselah, Lamech, and Noah remained in sorrow of heart, because their father had departed from them and could not see him again. And now we read the last chapter, chapter 22. Enoch kept the commandment of Jared his father and continued to minister in the cave. Many wonders happened to this man, Enoch, and he also wrote a celebrated book, but those wonders may not be told in this place. Then after this the children of Seth, as well as their children and their wives, went astray and fell. And when Enoch, Methuselah, Lamech, and Noah saw them, their hearts suffered because of their fall, which filled them with doubt and unbelief. And they wept and sought of God mercy to preserve them, and to bring them out of that wicked generation. Enoch continued in his ministry before the Lord 385 years, and at the end of that time he became aware through the grace of God that God intended to remove him from the earth. He then said to his son, O my son, I know that God intends to bring the waters of the flood on the earth and destroy his creation. And you are the last rulers over the people on this mountain. And I know that not one woman will be left for you to have children on this holy mountain. Not one of you will rule over the children of his people. No great number of you will be left on this mountain. Enoch also said to them, Watch over your souls and hold tight to your fear of God and your service to him, and worship him in righteous faith, and serve him in righteousness, innocence, and judgment. Worship him in repentance and in purity. When Enoch had ended his commandments to them, God transported him from that mountain to the land of life, to the mansions of the righteous and of the chosen ones, which is the abode of paradise of joy, in the light that reaches up to heaven. It is the light that is beyond the light of this world. It is the light of God that fills the whole world, and no place can contain it. When Enoch was in the light of God, and because of this he found himself out of the grasp of death until God would have him die. Until God would have him die? So he died at some point? What does that even mean? Altogether, not one of our fathers or of their children remained on that holy mountain except those three, Methuselah, Lamech, and Noah. All the rest went down from the mountain and fell into sin with the children of Cain, and they were forbidden to come back to that mountain, and none remained on it but those three men. This completes the second book of Adam and Eve. Interesting. Very, very interesting. Well, that was it. The second book of Adam and Eve. All the books of Adam and Eve. I believe there's only two of them based on what I have.